Ngahue, tēnā koe, Duncan.
Tēnā koe, Riana. Lovely to have you here. We've got you for 10 minutes, so I won't take up any more time. I'll hand straight over to you. Kia ora.
Ka pai. Kia ora, I take my submission as read because I'm going to be freestyling from it anyway. I made a couple of TikToks last year explaining the actual treaty principles and where they came from, and those TikToks gained a lot of interest. I had Southern Waikato farmers thanking me for the explanation, emails requesting to show them on a big screen at the Whakatane Saturday markets, a law firm in New Plymouth showing them to all staff, and most importantly to me, my dad getting calls from his old boys rugby mates saying that for the first time ever, they understood what the arguments were about. This shows clearly that the majority of New Zealanders don't know what the treaty does, and that the ACT Party is relying on that. I haven't seen them put any effort into actually educating New Zealand on where the principles come from, other than railroading people to their website, which people can tell is sneakily worded. And that's because if all New Zealanders actually understood the history of the Treaty of Waitangi and what the principles do, the only people who would be left on his side are Hobson's pledge. Because New Zealand culture is about looking after people, stopping on the side of the road to help with a tyre, being fair and doing what you say you're going to do, and honouring the treaty fits perfectly in that category. On this basis, I want to talk about a couple of the points David made in his oral submission and his interviews afterwards. David says that New Zealanders have been excluded from the conversation and everyone wants to be involved in deciding what the treaty principles are. On that basis, David and Hobson's pledge have to be disappointed by 300,000 submissions. There's over 3.5 million registered voters and not even 10% cared enough to put a submission in. And the reason behind that is because most New Zealanders don't care. Pākehā New Zealanders don't feel oppressed by the Treaty of Waitangi, and Māori don't feel advantaged. It's genuinely delusional and disrespectful to say that Māori are advantaged. I wish someone could go back and tell my dad that he could just use his Māori privilege while he was cold calling people out of the white pages, asking if they need an arborist. To say that Māori are advantaged is an insult to all hard-working Māori. For anyone who might be wondering why David is so upset by the Treaty of Waitangi when most people don't think about it at all, it's because it's an inconvenience to people who want to thrash the environment. Mining the seafloor, drilling for oil, forestry. If you watch all of David's interviews about this issue, he goes on and on about the Resource Management Act and the fact that iwi have had the right to be consulted when someone tries to do these environmental projects. So the only people who are really oppressed by the Treaty of Waitangi are overseas companies and big developers who are trying to get their grubby mitts on New Zealand's environment. Because I guarantee you that normal New Zealanders are not lying awake at night, staring at the roof thinking about the treaty provisions in the Resource Management Act. In his submission, David mentions that freedom under the law doesn't guarantee wealth or material equality, which translates to not everyone can be rich. He says it creates the best opportunities for prosperity. In other words, you can get ahead. And I don't disagree with this point he's made, but it comes down to whether you think that's the goal or not, where a handful of people can get ahead and get super rich, but it relies on everyone else being left behind. There's no reason we can't have the opportunities to get rich if you work hard, but if you're not lucky in a lot of the ways that you need to be, that doesn't mean you're screwed. I want to directly quote David here. He said every country in the world is in the business of trying to help people and that non-Māori are also disadvantaged. First of all, helping people is not a business. Secondly, of course, non-Māori are also disadvantaged because the way things are set up right now is for some people to get ahead, which relies on everyone else being left behind. That's why we have 2-income households working full-time still struggling to pay bills, but that's not the Treaty of Waitangi's fault. The point that David has conveniently forgotten is that when Māori get left behind, they get left further back. Māori die nearly 7 years earlier on average. Nearly 70% of kids in Oranga Tamariki are Māori. Māori suicide rates are nearly twice as high. I'm not rehashing all the statistics because at the end of the day I know that David already knows, but his answer just seems to boil down to someone's got to be in poverty. The main thing David Seymour has been successful in is drumming up a strange victim complex among a really small group of Pākehā. He's told them that they're missing out on Tino Rangatiratanga and now they feel ripped off. But most people still don't know what Tino Rangatiratanga is. Tino Rangatiratanga looks like Pohanga Reo and Kura Kaupapa, which are Māori language immersion schools that teach Māori values, who have achieved better statistics on passing NCEA and merit and excellence endorsements than mainstream schools. Tino Rangatiratanga looks like actually letting iwi help Oranga Tamariki look after kids. If New Zealanders had any idea how badly the government has been fumbling Māori kids in Oranga Tamariki's care and how long iwi have been struggling for the right to look after these kids, people would understand why the treaty is necessary. He says, where in the world has dividing people by race worked? Firstly, that's so dramatic. The treaty doesn't say Māori can go to Pack and Save, but Pākehā must go to Countdown. It's just upholding treaty rights. That's a contract. If New Zealand can't stop breaching the very first contract it entered into, then that must make New Zealand a terrible place to do business in. Secondly, Canada. Canada has their treaty rights actually written into their constitution, and they're not going down in a burning pile of poverty and civil war. The last point I'd like to make is that David says the bill is all about equality, and that he only wants to start a national conversation. If it's all about equality, I wonder if he knows that the main argument for a capital gains tax is equality. Basically that it's not very equal that rich people get to skip paying tax because they don't make their money through wages. But strangely, we haven't seen David upset about unequalness when it comes to tax. So I would just like to plant the seed or start a national conversation that any future referendum about equality, whether it's in 10 or 20 years' time, should focus on a capital gains tax just for, economic efficiency. The government needs to wake up. New Zealand statistics for homelessness, prisoner reoffending and child poverty are so embarrassing on an international scale. It's clear that what we have right now doesn't work. So it's time for the government to actually embrace Tino Rangatiratanga and the traditional Kiwi number 8 wai mentality and start being real world leaders in Indigenous relations. E mihi nei ki ngā toki o te whawhai mo te tiriti I roto I ngā tau, nā rātou te huarahi I para, hei whai mā te mai te tiko tiko nei. Koia tāku, that's all I have to say. Tēnei o ka mihi.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Riana. Love your work on social media. Let's go to Steve Abel first.
Can I defer to Hannah first? I'll jump up to that at this time.
Okay, Hannah.
Thank you, Steve. O tira, tēnā rā koe te tua wahine. E kore ngā mihi e mutu ki a koe me o mahi pa whakatairanga e koe ki runga I ngā pai aku e whakamata wera mo mea. Kānui taku nei. I just wanted, my one question is, could you just talk about maybe some of the stereotype misconceptions that you said to say Māori are a disadvantage to hardworking Māoris. So what are some of the misconceptions that we have some type of advantage in our country. Do you think you could touch on that?
I think one of the misconceptions is that Māori are lazy and all on the dole. Every Māori I know is incredibly hardworking. If you try to tell me that my uncles and my dad are lazy, there's no way. They're the hardest working people I know. And I think that people forget that that's the majority of Māori. They're not necessarily marching in the streets. They're out there working and contributing to the economy. And some people have no idea how the Treaty of Waitangi affects them, and that's not their fault. But it's just a responsibility of the New Zealand government to educate everyone.
Steve.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for your excellent submission. And you touched on a really important point, I think, that the author of this bill is cynically using a principle of equality to justify nullifying Māori tino ranga tiratanga, because really the motive is that it's a barrier to corporate free exploitation of our oceans, our coastlines, and so forth. That's what you alluded to. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in my oral submission as well, that the Treaty of Waitangi and the partnership principle in particular has given iwi the right to be consulted on a number of things like resource consent applications. One example would be the seabed mining off the shore of Taranaki. And most people aren't bothered by that because they're not trying to do seabed mining. So the people who are really upset by it are the overseas companies trying to get into seabed mining here.
Yeah, well articulated. I completely agree.
Thanks.
Okay, hey, look, thank you for that. Really good submission, and thanks for your contribution to the debate. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora.
That's the one I want there.
Yeah, that one.
That
Yeah,
is a good submission.
Riana is absolutely amazing. I've been following her on TikTok for ages. I took a couple of notes. One of them was the tyre, stopping to help someone with a flat tyre on the side of the road. There was try again. There was an American guy a year or two back who has moved to New Zealand, and he put up a TikTok saying that he was at a local rugby match and having a great time, and then had to go and do something else, and it was either his battery was flat or his tyre was flat. And he was saying in the States, nobody would care. Nobody would stop and help you with that. But he had an entire community of people come up to him and go, hey, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
And absolutely blown away by it. And yeah, that's just the Kiwi mentality.
Yeah, I remember actually that another one was tourists and went to jumpstart a vehicle, and one set of jumper leads wasn't quite far enough. And so 3 different sets of jumper leads were wired all together to jumpstart their vehicle. And they're like, what the hell? It's like, oh, we haven't got enough lead. I've got to see jumper leads. and then the parking lot person comes along there. It's like, oh, God, that's awkward being stuck in there, because she just wrote a ticket to them for overstaying 2 rounds back. And she felt really bad about the ticket, because if she knew it was the flat battery, she wouldn't have written the ticket. But they were just shocked. Everyone knew how to jumpstart a car in Levin.
Wow.
But the same thing. It's just one person has a flat battery, and 10 people, at some places 10 people will sit there and offer their battery to jumpstart you.
Yeah, I'm really confused that they decided to daisy chain the jumper cables rather than just move the working car closer.
Well, yes, but there were parked cars all over the place.
Okay. Yes,
in the metered parking in the middle of Levin and Oxford Street.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way to make it work in the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, Kiwi ingenuity. We'll figure it out.
Okay. We will switch over, and Laura's taking over.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, News Guide, the order, paper.